They say divorce is the breaking of two hearts. But in Zoya's case, it was the breaking of illusions. The office smelled of fresh leather and expensive cologne. Ryan sat across the mahogany desk, his signature pen resting between his fingers. He wore the look of a man who had already won, calm, arrogant, and untouchable. His crisp suit clung to his tall frame, and the silence in the room was suffocating. Across from him sat Zoya, his wife of 5 years. Or to him, his soon-to-be ex-wife. The divorce papers lay on the desk like a verdict. Ryan leaned back in his chair, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Sign it, Zoya. Let's not drag this out. We both know this marriage was never meant to last. My mission requires focus. You're just a distraction." His words were cold, rehearsed, and filled with the confidence of a man who believed. He knew her heart. In their past life, he had been right. Zoya had cried, begged, and clung to him. She had lost her dignity in front of his indifferent eyes. She remembered every moment of that humiliation, every sob, every sleepless night. But that was the old Zoya, the one who hadn't been reborn. This time, she lifted her chin, her eyes glimmering not with tears, but with a sharp, unexpected clarity. She picked up the pen, her movements graceful, steady. She signed her name at the bottom of the page without hesitation. Ryan blinked. His smirk faltered. Zoya slid the papers back toward him and finally spoke, her voice steady and calm. "Fine. I'll grant you your divorce." She paused, locking her gaze with his, and then, with the precision of a blade, she added, "But I'll take the assets." The silence cracked like thunder. Ryan's pen slipped slightly from his fingers. For the first time that morning, his composure wavered. "What did you just say?" Zoya folded her hands elegantly in her lap, her face unreadable. "You heard me. The house, the shares, the accounts under my name. I want them transferred before the papers are finalized." His jaw tightened. "Zoya, you're out of line. This divorce isn't about money. It's about setting each other free." She tilted her head, the faintest smile playing on her lips. "Yes, freedom. But freedom comes at a cost." And unlike before, her eyes burned with silent fire. "I won't walk away empty-handed." In her past life, she had left with nothing. No money, no pride, not even her self-respect. She had given him everything and received betrayal in return. But not this time. This time, rebirth had given her wisdom. Ryan's expression hardened, but beneath it, a flicker of something else: uncertainty. He hadn't expected this. He had expected tears, desperation, begging. The old Zoya, but the woman before him now was someone new. Someone he didn't recognize. Zoya leaned forward, her voice lowering. "You wanted a mission divorce, Ryan. You have it. But don't mistake my silence for weakness. I know my worth now." And with that, she rose from her chair, her movements smooth, elegant, final. Ryan stared at her retreating figure as the heels of her shoes clicked against the marble floor. For the first time since he had planned this separation, doubt crept into his heart. This wasn't the script he had written for her. He thought she would cry. Instead, she demanded the assets. And so, the first crack appeared in Ryan's perfect world. He thought the divorce was the end of her story. But for Zoya, it was only the beginning. Zoya walked out of Ryan's office with the papers in her hand, the weight of them pressing against her fingers. But this time, that weight didn't crush her, it steadied her. The sun outside was blindingly bright, the city alive with noise and movement. Cars honked, people hurried across streets, life surged on. She paused for a moment, lifting her face to the sky. feeling the warm rays against her skin. It was strange, this sensation of breathing with a heart that had lived twice, because this wasn't her first divorce. In her past life, the same papers had been signed. But instead of strength, she had drowned in sorrow. She remembered her trembling hands, the way her tears had smudged her signature. She remembered running after Rian, her voice breaking as she begged him to stay. She remembered the humiliation, the cold rejection in his eyes as he walked away without looking back. And she remembered what came after: loneliness, desperation, poverty. She had left with nothing because she hadn't dared to ask. She had thought love was about sacrifice, about giving without keeping. And so she gave until she had nothing left. The memory stuck like fire. But rebirth had given her a gift that many never receive: a second chance. This time, she would not waste it. Zoya moved through the bustling street, her heels clicking with rhythm, her posture straight. For the first time in years, she felt in control. She wasn't the abandoned wife anymore. She was the woman who had faced death, looked it in the eye, and come back with fire in her veins. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. A message from Rian. Zoya, we'll discuss the assets later. Don't be unreasonable. Unreasonable. She laughed softly, a sound that startled even her. In her past life, he had called her unreasonable whenever she asked for his time, his affection, his loyalty. And she had believed him. She had swallowed the word like poison, letting it eat her confidence. Not anymore, she typed back quickly. There's nothing to discuss. Freedom isn't free. You wanted divorce. You'll give me what I deserve. And she pressed send. Meanwhile, back in his office, Rian read the message with a frown. His hand tightened around his phone, the muscles in his jaw twitching. This wasn't Zoya. This wasn't the soft, meek wife who once cried when he forgot anniversaries, who smiled even when he dismissed her, who accepted scraps of affection while he devoted himself to missions and to Selina.no. This woman was sharp, calculated, unafraid, and Rian, for the first time, felt unsettled. He set his phone down and leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. What game are you playing, Zoya? He muttered to himself, because in his script, she was supposed to break. She was supposed to walk out with nothing, making it easier for him to justify leaving her behind. Instead, she had walked away with fire. That night, Zoya sat by her bedroom window, the divorce papers spread before her. The city lights twinkled below, and she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. She touched the papers, her fingers gliding over the signatures. In her last life, this had been her death sentence. But now it was her rebirth certificate. Her heart whispered a silent vow. This time, I will not beg. This time, I will not break. This time, I will live for myself. And in the depths of her chest, where despair once lived, a spark of something new began to grow: strength, independence, and the promise of a story not yet told. Zoya's rebirth had only just begun. But already, the rules of the game were changing. Rian thought she would crumble. Instead, she was rewriting destiny itself. Zoya didn't wait for Ryan's approval. The next morning, she visited her lawyer's office with a calm determination that surprised even herself. The lawyer, an older man who had handled countless messy separations, studied her face carefully before speaking. Mrs. Rian. Forgive me, Zoya, he corrected quickly at her sharp glance. Are you certain you want to pursue the asset division so aggressively? Most women just want the matter closed peacefully. Zoya smiled faintly. Most women are afraid of being called greedy. I was one of them once. But now, I understand something, Mr. Khalid. Peace isn't given, it's taken. And dignity has a price. The lawyer's brows rose. He had expected tears, hesitation, maybe even regret. Instead, he saw in her eyes a steel he hadn't seen in years of practice. Very well, he said, adjusting his glasses. Then we'll proceed. She signed the papers, setting in motion a process that would shake Ryan's carefully ordered world. As she left the office, she remembered another time, another life. She had stood in this very building before, but broken. That Zoya had whispered, "I don't need anything, just let me keep the memories." And she had walked away with nothing but pain, her lips curled. Not this time. By afternoon, the news was already spreading in hushed tones across their social circle. "Did you hear?" Zoya demanded. Assets, unbelievable. She always seemed so soft. She must be desperate. But for every whisper of judgment, there were also voices of admiration. "She's smarter than I thought." About time someone stood up to Ryan. And when these whispers reached Ryan himself, he felt a strange irritation gnaw at him. She was supposed to vanish quietly from his life, leaving no mark. Yet here she was, making headlines in their elite circle. His phone rang constantly. Old associates, family, even Selina, all questioning him. Selina, with her honeyed voice, asked over dinner that night, "Why is she making this so messy, Ryan? I thought you said she was weak." Ryan's fork froze halfway to his mouth. He forced a smirk. "She is weak. She's just pretending. It won't last." But in his chest, a flicker of doubt. Pretending? Or had he underestimated her all along? Zoya, meanwhile, was not pretending. She was planning. She began to visit properties, reviewing shares, studying accounts. Every signature she demanded was backed by confidence, every negotiation sharp. The men on Ryan's legal team underestimated her at first, speaking slowly as though she were fragile. But after her third meeting, when she counted every point with logic and facts, they stopped underestimating her. Ryan, who attended one of the sessions, sat stiffly as she spoke with poise. He remembered the woman who used to wait at home, cooking his favorite meals, staring at the clock as he disappeared into missions and lies. This Zoya was different. Her voice was firm. Her eyes did not look to him for approval. When the session ended, he leaned close and muttered, "What are you trying to prove, Zoya?" She met his gaze steadily. "That I am not disposable. That I am not the woman you remember." Her words struck harder than he expected. Later that evening, she stood before her mirror. She studied her reflection, the same dark hair, the same eyes, but a different soul within them. She remembered crying in this mirror once, begging her reflection to be stronger. Now she no longer begged. She promised. This was only the beginning. Ryan, alone in his office that night, stared at the divorce papers once more. He had thought ending this marriage would be simple: a signature, a goodbye and freedom. But instead, he felt something unfamiliar creeping in. Annoyance, restlessness, perhaps even fear. Zoya wasn't just walking away, she was rising. And he wasn't sure he could stop her. Zoya had lived through this once before. She remembered how it had unfolded, how Selina had entered their lives like a shadow, smiling sweetly in public, while stealing everything in private. In her past life, Zoya had been blind. She had believed Selina was just a friend, a harmless presence around Ryan. She hadn't noticed the secret glances, the late-night calls, the way Selina had slowly woven herself into Ryan's world until Zoya was nothing but an afterthought. But this time, she noticed. The first time she saw Selina after the divorce announcement, it was at a charity gala. Zoya walked in wearing a sleek black gown, her hair styled simply but elegantly. She hadn't intended to attract attention, but the room fell silent for a moment as she entered. Confidence carried more beauty than any jewel could. Selina was already there, draped in red silk, her laughter tinkling as she clung to Ryan's arm. Their eyes met across the room. Zoya smiled. Not warmly, not coldly, just enough to unsettle. Selina's lips twitched, her mask almost slipping. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, as though caught between two storms. Zoya lifted her glass and sipped unbothered. She didn't need to rush. She knew exactly who Selina was and what she was capable of. Later that night, while others mingled, Zoya moved gracefully through the crowd, listening. People talked when they thought you weren't paying attention. Selina's been seen at the ministry with Ryan more than once. Isn't that strange? They say she has connections in foreign arms contracts. Dangerous woman. Poor Zoya. She has no idea. Zoya hid a laugh. Poor Zoya. If only they knew. In her past life, Selina had ruined everything. She had whispered lies into Ryan's ears, poisoned him against his wife, and when Zoya was finally discarded, Selina had disappeared with wealth and secrets that left Ryan's career in shambles. Zoya had died before she saw the full destruction. But in this life, she would watch it unfold and make sure the world saw the truth. The first seed of her trap was small. At the gala, she approached Selina with perfect politeness. "Selina," she said softly, her smile unwavering. "It's been a while." Selina's grip on Ryan's arm tightened almost imperceptibly. "Zoya, I didn't expect you here." "Why not?" Zoya tilted her head. "Divorce doesn't make me invisible. In fact, it makes me freer." The words cut sharper than they sounded. Selina's smile faltered for just a moment. Ryan cleared his throat. "Zoya, we don't need to make a scene." She turned to him, eyes calm. "Oh, I'm not making a scene. Just remembering old friends." Her gaze lingered on Selina, just long enough for the woman to shift under the weight of it. Then, with a polite nod, Zoya walked away. The first trap wasn't confrontation. It was awareness. Letting Selina know she was seen. That night, alone, in her apartment, Zoya reviewed the financial documents she had fought for. Among them were small details she hadn't noticed before in her past life: bank transfers, unusual investments, accounts linked to shell companies, and at the center of them all, Selina's name appeared again and again. Her lips curled. In her past life, she hadn't had the strength or clarity to fight. She had let Selina win without resistance. But now she had time, resources, and knowledge, and she would use them all. Ryan, meanwhile, wasn't blind to the shift either. That evening, when Selina complained in the car, her voice sharp with annoyance, he found himself distracted. "She embarrassed me, Ryan. At the gala, did you see how she looked at me? Like she knows something. You should put her in her place before she ruins your reputation." Ryan stared out of the window, his jaw tight. "She's not the same anymore." "I don't know what's gotten into her," Selina frowned. "She's bluffing. Don't fall for it." But his silence betrayed him. A part of him, buried deep already, knew Zoya wasn't bluffing. She was preparing. Zoya closed her files and stood at the window, looking out over the city lights. In her past life, Selina had destroyed her from the shadows. This time, Zoya would bring Selina into the light. This time, Selina would be the one exposed, and Zoya reborn, stronger, wiser, would be ready. Zoya had always been underestimated. People saw her as quiet, soft-spoken, and sheltered. For years, she let them think that. In her past life, she even believed it herself. But now, with the assets secured and the weight of her rebirth pressing her forward, she was ready to show the world who she really was. The first step was simple. Money was not meant to be hoarded. It was meant to be moved, to grow. She had learned that painfully in her previous life, when she had walked away penniless, surviving on scraps while Rian and Selina thrived. This time, she would not just survive. She would build. Within weeks, Zoya made her first investments small. Tech startups, women-led businesses, and a housing project for single mothers. Each decision was precise, backed by research she did late into the night. Her lawyer, Khalid, was astonished at how quickly she adapted. Most clients take months to understand portfolios like this, he said one evening as she flipped through reports with calm eyes. Zoya smiled faintly. I've had 2 lifetimes to learn, Mr. Khalid. He laughed, thinking it a metaphor. But she knew better. Her moves didn't go unnoticed. Articles began to appear online. Zoya Rian, from divorce to rising businesswoman. The ex-wife who turned her assets into opportunity. She attended business panels, fundraisers, and conferences. Wherever she went, people whispered not with pity, but with admiration. She's stronger than I thought. Did you hear about her latest project? Brilliant. Rian must be regretting this divorce now. And though she told herself she didn't care about his regret, a part of her felt satisfied knowing that her name was no longer tied to weakness, it was tied to power. Rian, on the other hand, was hearing these whispers everywhere. He went to the ministry. His colleagues smirked. Your ex-wife's making waves, Rian. Quite the woman. At dinners, older men nudged him. You let go of a diamond, my friend. Even Selina, with all her poise, couldn't hide her irritation. Why does everyone talk about her like she's some kind of saint? She's just playing a role. Rian clenched his jaw but said nothing, because deep down, a truth gnawed at him. Zoya wasn't playing. She was winning. One evening, Zoya hosted a charity dinner for her housing project. The hall glittered with chandeliers, laughter, and admiration. She wore a simple navy gown, nothing extravagant, but the grace she carried made her the brightest star in the room. When she stood to speak, the crowd fell silent. 5 years ago, she began, her voice clear. I thought happiness meant sacrifice. I thought love meant giving everything, even when you received nothing in return. But life has a way of teaching us differently. Today I know happiness begins with dignity. And dignity begins with independence. The applause was thunderous. From the corner of the room, she saw a pair of eyes watching her. Rian. He hadn't been invited, but of course, he had influence. Of course, he found his way in. He stood near the back, half hidden, his expression unreadable. For a moment, their eyes locked. Once upon a time, that look would have broken her. She would have forgotten the pain, the betrayal, everything, just to have him see her. Now, she held his gaze without fear, finished her speech, and turned away. The message was clear. She didn't need him anymore. After the dinner, as the guests began to leave, she stepped out onto the terrace for a moment of quiet. The night air was cool. Carrying the hum of the city below, a voice came from behind. Low, familiar. You've changed. She didn't need to turn. Or maybe I just stopped pretending. Rian stepped beside her, his suit immaculate, but his eyes betrayed a restlessness she had never seen before. You've surprised me, Zoya, he admitted. I thought the divorce would break you. She laughed softly, without bitterness. You thought I would cry, Rian. You built your life on that assumption. But some of us don't break, we rebuild. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Zoya turned, her gaze steady. You wanted freedom. Now you have it. So stop looking back. And with that, she walked away, leaving him on the terrace, staring into the night, haunted by a wife he no longer recognized. That night, as Zoya closed her apartment door behind her, she felt something she hadn't felt in either life before. Peace, not because she had won anything yet, but because, finally, she was no longer afraid to live for herself. The evening was quiet, but inside my heart, a storm brewed. Kabir was unsettled. He had thought that by now, I would have softened, that perhaps nostalgia would pull me back into his orbit. But every day, I showed him a Zoya he had never known before, a woman who no longer pleaded, no longer compromised, no longer asked for crumbs of affection. Instead, I was a woman who demanded her rightful place, her dignity, and her worth. I could see it in his eyes, confusion mixed with admiration and fear. He didn't know how to deal with me anymore. The Zoya he had once dismissed as fragile and dependent was gone. Rebirth had burned those weaknesses away, leaving me stronger than ever. One evening, Kabir came to meet me at the estate lawyer's office. He thought he could sway me with charm. He wore that old cologne, the one he knew I used to adore. He leaned back in his chair, crossing one leg over the other, smirking like the man who believed he could control any room he entered. Zoya, he said smoothly, you don't have to make this so dramatic. Why fight over assets when you know what we had? Don't you think our years together mean more than papers and money? I smiled politely, my eyes locked on his. Years together? You mean the years I supported you, sacrificed for you, while you were secretly laying the foundation of a life with another woman? That's not called partnership, Kabir, that's called betrayal. And forgive me if I no longer find betrayal romantic. His smirk faltered, just slightly. You're not the woman I knew. I leaned forward. Exactly. The woman you knew died the day you signed the divorce paper thinking I'd fall apart. What you see now is the woman who rose from those ashes, and she doesn't cry anymore. She negotiates, she demands, and she wins. The lawyer cleared his throat awkwardly, breaking the silence that stretched between us. Kabir's jaw tightened. For the first time, I saw it, the cracks in his armor. He wasn't as unshakable as he pretended to be. Days turned into weeks, and the negotiations grew more intense. Kabir tried every tactic: mockery, sweet talk, anger, even guilt. But I didn't budge. Each time he underestimated me. I rose higher, firmer, colder, and then a twist I hadn't seen coming landed like a thunderbolt. One late night, as I reviewed the documents, my lawyer leaned closer and whispered, Zoya, there's something unusual. Kabir has hidden assets abroad. A whole set of properties and accounts. Under another name. He's been moving money quietly for years. For a moment, my breath caught. Rage threatened to consume me. He had not only betrayed me emotionally, he had betrayed me financially too, siphoning off what was rightfully mine. But then a strange calmness settled over me. Because now, I held a weapon sharper than any he could wield. Knowledge. Proof. And with proof came power. The next morning, I walked into Kabir's office, his temple of ego, with glass walls and polished wood, where he reigned like a king. He looked up from his desk, smirk ready, as though prepared for another sparring match. But I didn't sit. I simply placed a folder on his desk, sliding it toward him. He frowned, opened it, and his face drained of color. Bank accounts. Offshore properties. Evidence. You didn't think I'd find out? I asked softly, Almost kindly, Kabir tried to mask his panic. Zoya, this isn't what you think. I cut him off. It's exactly what I think. And now you'll sign over everything I've asked for or I go public. Imagine the headlines, Kabir, the mighty Kabir exposed for fraud, hiding assets, betraying his own wife. What do you think that will do to your reputation? To your empire? He slammed the folder shut, glaring at me. But behind the glare was defeat. He knew he had lost. For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar wash over me, not just anger, not just determination. It was victory. Pure, undeniable victory. But deep inside, I also knew this battle was far from over. Because Kabir was not a man who accepted loss easily. And though I had cornered him today, I could already sense that he was plotting his next move. What he didn't realize, though, was that this time I was always one step ahead. The night after I cornered Kabir with the evidence, I expected relief to flood me. I had won the round. After all, he had no choice but to comply, to give me what I demanded. Yet, instead of relief, I felt the air thick with anticipation, as though the calm was only the hush before a violent storm. Kabir had been many things to me: a husband, a betrayer, a lesson. But above all, he had always been a strategist. And strategists never surrender without a plan hidden up their sleeves. 2 days later, I got a taste of that plan. I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing relentlessly. My name was splattered across headlines, my face plastered in articles online. Zoya armed the greedy wife, one headline screamed. Another sneered, she's after Kabir's empire, not his heart. Photos of me stepping out of the lawyer's office, my determined expression, were twisted into an ugly narrative. Kabir had struck back not with lawyers, but with the court of public opinion. He painted himself as the wronged husband, the nobleman whose bitter wife wanted to strip him of everything he built. It was a clever move. Sympathy poured toward him while strangers threw daggers of judgment my way. For a moment, the old Zoya, the one before rebirth, stirred inside me. That Zoya would have cried herself to sleep, begging him to stop, breaking under the weight of humiliation. But this Zoya smiled bitterly, scrolling through the venomous comments. He had underestimated me again. Later that evening, he called. His voice dripped with false sweetness. Zoya, you've had your fun. But now the world sees the truth. Don't embarrass yourself further. Take a small settlement and walk away quietly. No one will believe you if you push harder. I let him finish, then replied with ice in my tone. Kabir, you just declared war on the wrong woman. And let me remind you, I hold the truth. Truth doesn't need to be believed. It only needs to be shown. I hung up, leaving him with silence. The next few weeks were brutal. Social media was ruthless, but I didn't bend. Instead, I turned his weapon back on him. I began releasing carefully chosen pieces of evidence: emails, bank transfers, subtle threads that hinted at the empire he had hidden. I didn't dump everything at once. I bled it slowly, deliberately, like drops of poison, and people began to notice. Whispers darted. What if Kabir isn't as innocent as he claims? Journalists began digging. Competitors sniffed opportunity. His spotless image began to crack, the shine tarnishing. That's when the second twist landed. One late evening, as I was leaving a meeting, a black car pulled up beside me. The tinted window slid down, and there she was, Raina, Kabir's mistress. The woman he had risked everything for. She looked nothing like the fragile beauty Kabir had once painted her to be. Her eyes were sharp, her smile calculating. Zoya, she purred, Kabir underestimates you, but I don't. You think you're winning, but trust me, you're playing his game. He'll never stop until he destroys you. She leaned closer, her voice dropping. But you and I, we don't have to be enemies, I froze. Of all the things I had prepared for, an alliance with Raina was not one of them. What exactly are you suggesting? I asked carefully. Her smile widened. Simple. Kabir used both of us. He promised me the world while draining you dry. If we work together, we can end him completely. You take what you deserve and I take the rest. The proposal hung in the air, dangerous and tempting. My heart thudded with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. Was this a trap Kabir had set, or was Raina truly turning against him? For the first time, I realized something vital. Kabir's empire wasn't built on strength, it was built on manipulation, on lies, on making people fight each other while he stood above. But now, his mistress and his wife stood on the same side of the chessboard. If I played this carefully, it wouldn't just be about demanding my share. It would be about dismantling Kabir completely. But could I really trust Raina? Or was this the most dangerous twist of all? Raina's words lingered in my mind like smoke, twisting and curling long after she disappeared back into that slick black car. Trusting her felt like clutching a knife by the blade. It could protect me or cut me to pieces. But the thought of Kabir falling by the very hands he once used to betray me, that temptation was hard to ignore. For 2 nights, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every memory I had of her, how Kabir had looked at her with longing, how he had called her his happiness. It stuck, yes, but beneath that sting was something else. Clarity. Raina was not some innocent victim. She had chosen to be with him, to share his stolen life. But if she now sought to switch sides, it meant Kabir's control was slipping. The 3rd night, I made my choice. I called her. Let's meet, I said. My voice was steady, though my heart raced. We met at a quiet rooftop CAF in the city, hidden away from prying eyes. She looked flawless, dressed in crimson silk that shimmered against the night lights. But it was her eyes that betrayed her, a sharp glint of desperation behind the charm. You're right, I told her, leaning back, arms crossed. Kabir used us both. But if we do this, it's on my terms. No lies, no games. One slip from you, and I'll bury you with him. Her lips curved into a slow smile. There, enough. I don't need to play games, Zoya. I just need Kabir to fall. He promised me the world, but he's a man who promises everything and delivers nothing. That night, an unlikely alliance was born. Together, we mapped out Kabir's weaknesses. Raina had insight into his personal life, his habits, the lies he whispered in his most private hours. I had the documents, the evidence, the financial trail that could expose him to the world. Piece by piece, we stitched together a strategy, but what neither of us expected was how Kabir would react when the walls began to close in. One morning, as I walked into my lawyer's office, I found him pale, clutching a letter. Zoya, he whispered, Kabir filed an injunction against you. He claims you're mentally unstable, unfit to handle finances. He's petitioning to freeze your access to the assets until a psychological evaluation clears you. For a moment, fury burned so hot inside me I thought I would collapse. Kabir wasn't just trying to discredit me publicly anymore. He was attacking my very sanity, painting me as hysterical, broken. I laughed bitterly. Typical. When a woman refuses to bend, men call her crazy. But instead of breaking me, his move only fueled my fire. I went on the offensive. Through quiet channels, I leaked one of his offshore account documents to a journalist known for ruthless exposés. Within 48 hours, the media storm shifted. Suddenly, Kabir wasn't the noble husband anymore, he was the shady businessman with suspicious foreign holdings. And then came the breaking point. Raina called me one night, her voice shaking. "Zoya, you need to see this." She sent me a video, a recording she had kept hidden. In it, Kabir sat in a dimly lit room, speaking to one of his confidants. His words were cold, chilling. "If Zoya doesn't back off, I'll ruin her. She thinks she can win by playing strong. She forgets I made her. Without me, she's nothing." Those words should have shattered me. Years ago, they would have. But now, they ignited something different, a fury sharper than steel, a resolve deeper than blood. The next morning, I sent that video to every media outlet that had ever questioned me. Within hours, it went viral. Kabir's empire shook under the weight of his own arrogance. Shareholders panicked, his board questioned his leadership, his name turned toxic in the business world. For the first time, Kabir was the one standing in the fire, not me. But as I watched the chaos unfold, a strange thought struck me. Victory was within my grasp, yes. But something darker lingered in Kabir's silence. He wasn't the type to collapse quietly. And if he was cornered enough, I knew he would strike back with something far more dangerous than words or lies. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of the war. Kabir had always been a man of control. Every move, every word, every glance carefully calculated. But now the balance had shifted. The empire he had built on manipulation and fear was cracking, and he felt it. Every article, every viral post, every whisper of his secrets burned him more than any financial loss ever could. He realized then that attacking my assets wasn't enough. Words alone wouldn't bring Zoya down this time. She was stronger than he ever imagined. So he turned to something far more dangerous. Me.it started subtly at first. Messages on my phone, veiled threats disguised as concern, anonymous emails suggesting my reputation was on the line. Then, whispers in the city, friends, colleagues, even my lawyer received hints of scandal, suggesting I was the one hiding truths, that I had manipulated Raina, that I had plotted against Kabir personally. I felt the familiar tension stir in my chest. Years ago, I would have crumbled. I would have called him, begged him to stop, questioned my own worth. But this time, I didn't. Instead, I watched. I waited. One evening, as I returned from a charity event showcasing one of my newly launched businesses, I found my car tires slashed. The note left on my windshield was brief, chilling. "You're stepping too far, Zoya. Watch your back." For a moment, I felt the old fear, a flicker of the helplessness that had haunted me before rebirth. But it lasted only a heartbeat. Then clarity took over. Kabir was predictable, arrogant, blinded by the idea that he could intimidate me. He didn't understand that I had already faced betrayal, humiliation, and loss and emerged stronger each time. I called Raina. "He's escalating," I said calmly. "Yes," she replied, her voice tight. "And it's only going to get worse. He won't stop until he thinks he has destroyed everything you've built, including yourself." I nodded. "Then we stay ahead of him. Always. One step ahead. He wants to play dirty. Fine. Let's make him the one who looks like the villain." The next move required precision. I increased security at my businesses, changed my routines, and monitored Kabir's every action. Every threat he sent, every rumor he planted, I anticipated. Reiner provided insight into his personal habits. I coordinated with legal teams to ensure that any move he made would backfire. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about strategy. One night, Kabir made a bold attempt. He invited me to a private meeting under the guise of reconciliation, trying to lure me into a trap that could ruin my reputation if it went wrong. I walked in confidently, dressed elegantly but unassuming, my posture unshakable. Kabir's eyes flickered with surprise. He had expected hesitation, fear, doubt. He had expected the old Zoya, but the woman standing before him was nothing like she had imagined. "Zoya," he said smoothly, masking tension with charm, "can't we end this civilly? You've taken enough. Let the past go." I smiled faintly. "Kabir, the past is what taught me how to protect the future. You may think I'm being aggressive, but I'm only defending what's mine. And what's yours to claim is already accounted for." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You don't understand. I built everything. Without me, you have nothing." I stepped closer, my voice steady and shaken. "I had nothing before you, Kabir. And I have everything now. Because I took it. Because I survived. Because I refuse to be broken again." For the first time, I saw true fear in his eyes. Not the fear of losing money, but the fear of losing control. The realization that the woman he once discarded, the woman he thought would crumble, had outgrown him completely. He leaned back, jaw tight, silent. And in that silence, I felt the power shift definitively. That night, I returned home and allowed myself a rare moment of reflection. Each step I had taken, each move I had made, was a declaration not just to Kabir, but to the world. I was no longer the woman who begged for scraps of love or approval. I was Zoya, reborn, resilient, and unstoppable. And yet, even as victory gleamed before me, I knew Kabir's next move would be his most dangerous yet, because when a man like him loses control, he stops playing games and starts waging war. Kabir's desperation became palpable. His empire was crumbling, his reputation tarnished, and his influence slipping through his fingers like sand. Every attempt he made to intimidate or manipulate me had backfired, leaving him exposed in ways even he hadn't anticipated. But Kabir was nothing if not relentless. And now he had one last plan, a move that could either destroy me completely or, if I was clever, finally end his hold over my life for good. It began subtly. Overnight, rumors spread about my businesses, questioning the legitimacy of the funding, the management, even my ethics. Legal notices arrived at my office, claiming discrepancies in accounts that had been audited and cleared months before. Kabir was trying to suffocate me with a storm of bureaucracy, using every resource, every ally, every ounce of his power. I didn't flinch. Instead, I prepared. Reiner and I worked closely, coordinating each response with precision. Every legal notice was countered with evidence, every rumor quelled before it could take root, and every attempt to tarnish my reputation became a trap for Kabir. And then, the moment came. It was a gala organized by one of Kabir's closest business partners. An event meant to showcase his continued dominance. Kabir was certain I would be intimidated into silence. He was wrong. I entered with confidence, dressed in a sleek silver gown that shimmered under the lights. Every eye in the room followed me, whispers spreading like wildfire. Kabir noticed, his jaw tightening as he realized the crowd wasn't here for him, they were here for me. I walked directly to the podium, ignoring Kabir entirely, and addressed the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady and commanding, "there has been much talk about integrity, leadership, and success. But success without honesty is nothing, and integrity without courage is meaningless." I paused, letting my words settle over the room. Every reporter, every investor, every influential figure was listening intently. Some have tried to undermine me, spread falsehoods, and manipulate truth. But truth has a way of surfacing. And tonight, I present you with facts that show the mismanagement, the secret accounts, the unethical decisions that have threatened not just my life, but the lives of many. From my bag, I revealed documents, screenshots, and recordings. The room fell silent as the evidence displayed my claims Kabir's empire was not as flawless as he had made it appear. Whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs into stunned conversations. Kabir's face turned pale. He tried to speak, to charm, to explain, but no one listened. The power had shifted. Rainer, standing beside me, whispered, "It's done. He can't come back from this." I nodded, letting a small smile cross my face. Years of pain, betrayal, and humiliation had led to this moment. And yet, as the applause began to build, a strange thought crossed my mind. Victory felt sweet, but also fragile. Kabir might be exposed, but people like him rarely vanish quietly. There could be another twist, another attempt to reclaim control. I pushed the thought aside. For now, I had won. Later, in the quiet of my apartment, I reflected on everything. The divorce that once felt like the end had become a rebirth. Every insult, every betrayal, every act of manipulation had forged me into a version of myself I could never have imagined. Kabir had underestimated me, as all men like him did. But I had learned, grown, and risen stronger than ever. And tonight, the world had witnessed it. I allowed myself a moment to savor the victory, not just over Kabir, but over my own past fears and insecurities. Because in the end, this was not just about assets or revenge or power. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my voice, and I had done it fully, completely, and without compromise. The days that followed the gala were surreal. Kabir's world was in shambles. His empire reeled from the public exposure. His closest allies distanced themselves, and his reputation, a thing he had once thought unshakable, crumbled with every passing hour. But for me, life had shifted in a way I hadn't expected. Freedom didn't feel like a mere absence of chains. It felt like a wind that carried every possibility. Each morning, I woke with purpose, unburdened by fear or doubt, and I moved forward with clarity I had never possessed before. Raina remained by my side, her initial motives now transformed into something more complex. She had started as an ally, for personal gain, but witnessing my resolve, my strategy, and my refusal to falter even when the world attacked me had earned her respect. In a way, we became mirrors of each other, two women who had been used, underestimated, and betrayed, now standing unbroken, unrelenting. "You've changed everything," she admitted one afternoon as we reviewed plans for expanding my business network. "You're not just reborn, Zoya. You've rewritten the rules. Anyone who crosses you, they don't come back from it." I nodded, a quiet satisfaction settling over me. "That's the thing about being reborn. You remember the pain, the betrayal, but you also remember what it taught you. You don't run from it. You use it." Meanwhile, Kabir attempted a last-ditch effort to reclaim control. He sent legal threats, tried to manipulate mutual acquaintances, and even reached out to former investors to salvage his crumbling image. But it was too late. The truth had already surfaced. and the world had aligned itself with reality. Investors and partners now approached me with proposals, opportunities, and admiration. They saw me as a symbol not just of resilience, but of justice. One evening, as I reviewed contracts for a new project, I received a message from Kabir. It was short, almost pitiful. "You've won, Zoya. I see that now. I underestimated you." I stared at the words, a mixture of relief and indifference washing over me. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. The victory wasn't about him admitting defeat, it was about reclaiming my life entirely. That night, I walked along the city skyline, the lights reflecting off the river below. I thought about everything I had endured, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the quiet moments of despair that had once threatened to define me. And I realized something profound. Rebirth wasn't just about surviving. It was about thriving, about taking the lessons from the past and forging a life that was stronger, smarter, and freer than before. I had demanded my assets, yes, but more importantly, I had demanded my dignity, my respect, and my place in the world. No longer was I a passive player in someone else's story. I was the author of my own narrative. As the city hummed beneath me, I received a call, not from Raina, not from Kabir, but from someone new, a potential partner for a global initiative, inspired by my journey, wanting to collaborate. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very circumstances that had once been my downfall had now become the foundation of my ascent. I smiled, letting the wind sweep through my hair. The mission, divorce, the betrayal, the struggle, it had all led here. And I had emerged victorious, whole, and unapologetically myself. The chapter with Kabir had closed. The chapter of rebirth, empowerment, and relentless courage had just begun. The morning sun spilled across my apartment, casting a golden glow that felt like a promise of everything yet to come. For the first time in years, I felt truly unburdened. The shadows of the past, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the divorce had receded, leaving only clarity, strength, and purpose. Raina and I met for coffee at a quiet CAF downtown. The air between us was no longer tense or suspicious. Instead, it was a bond forged in fire. We laughed softly over small talk, a comfort neither of us had known before. In this strange twist of fate, betrayal had transformed into alliance and resentment into respect. "You know," Raina said, stirring her cup, "I never thought I'd meet a woman like you. Someone who could survive everything and still rise higher." I smiled, a calm, unwavering smile. We all have strength inside us. Some just take a lifetime or a rebirth to find it. Meanwhile, Kabir's empire had fractured. Investors withdrew support, partners severed ties, and the media scrutinized his every move. He was no longer the untouchable man he once was, the king of control and manipulation. I had dismantled the narrative he had built around himself, not through malice, but through truth, strategy, and the unyielding resolve of a woman who refused to be defeated. A message arrived from him unexpectedly. Short, almost hollow. "Zoya, I see you. You've changed everything. I misjudged you." I read it, considered it, and then deleted it. The past deserved acknowledgement, yes, but not engagement. My life belonged to me now, not to the man who had tried to define it for his own comfort. In the weeks that followed, my ventures flourished. Projects I had once only dreamed of came to life. I traveled for conferences, forged global partnerships, and mentored women who had faced the same kinds of challenges I once had. Each success was a testament not only to ambition, but to resilience, to the ability to transform pain into empowerment, even more importantly, I discovered peace. I no longer sought validation from anyone, no former husband, no society, no one. Happiness was no longer tied to anyone else's approval. It was mine. Fully, completely, irrevocably. One evening, standing on my balcony, overlooking the city lights, I reflected on everything. The divorce that once felt like an ending had been the beginning of something far greater. Kabir's betrayal, Selena's schemes, Reina's reluctant alliance, all had been pieces of a puzzle I was finally able to complete. I had been reborn, not just into a new life, but into the woman I had always been capable of becoming. Strong, independent, strategic, and unstoppable. I was no longer defined by what others took from me, but by what I chose to create for myself. And in that realization, I found the greatest victory of all: freedom, dignity, and the knowledge that no one could ever take my life, my choices, or my spirit from me again. The night air was cool, but I felt warmth from within. Reborn, I had claimed not only my assets but my power, my voice, and my destiny, and as the city hummed below, I smiled. The story that had once been about loss, betrayal, and heartbreak had transformed into a story of triumph, resilience, and rebirth. This was my life, my story, and I would write every chapter from here on forward on my own terms.